you join us here at Procurement and Supply Chain Live Dubai. You are very welcome indeed, and it's time to go to our first panel of the day, and that is the Procurement Transformation Forum. We've got some fantastic experience and insights available on the panel for us today, so do make sure you send your questions through using the app. They come through to me and I will put those to our panellists as often as I possibly can. So it is my pleasure to introduce Mohammadi, Chief Procurement Officer at Mammut World. Joining us also is Cory Thwaites, Senior Executive Vice President Group Procurement at QNB Group. Vidya Malkani, Managing Partner at VMC Consulting Services. We were hoping to be joined by Asma AlMulla from AW Rostamani Group. We will try and get her to join us if she comes available in the next few minutes. And also joining us is Alberto Medina, founder of Telescope Group. So lovely to see you all. Some of them, you are veterans of some of our past events. Lovely to see you again, and thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolute pleasure. Right, as I said, we have four of you, so and quite a lot to cover, so we can try and keep the answers relatively punchy. I would appreciate, so we can get as many questions in as possible. Where I wanted to start with everything is about efficiency first, because a lot of transformation initiatives are about efficiency. Now, all of you are coming to this from slightly different perspectives, because you all work in such varying areas. But let's start, Mohammadi, we'll start with you from Mammut World about efficiency.
Yeah.
How can organisations really effectively transform their procurement functions to drive efficiency, drive cost savings? What have you guys done there?
Well, first, hello to everyone. Actually, talking about efficiency and the cost reduction. Well, in today's world, in procurement transformation, cost reduction is not the first priority. We are, let's say, if we were in 1980s, the cost reduction will be our first priority in procurement transformation and digitalization of procurement teams. Today, we do cost reduction, we do total cost ownership management in order to create a value in our supply chain and in our procurement. Well, in order to do, or let's say to create value, we need to manage costs, manage the efficiency of our procurement policies, manage the data, structured data that we have as an input into our leadership of the company. Well, in order to be efficient, we need to have the talented people. Always in any transformation, in any, let's say, center of excellence of any company, I emphasize on the people's, let's say, role in this, let's say, journey. Because if you have technology, if you have the stakeholders aligned for any kind of a transformation, but you do not have the talented people in line, you will not get to anywhere. So most part of the efficiency will relate to the people who implement, who operate this transformation, and then the supply base that will be part of it. Let's say the most important part of the cost reduction and efficiency in today's world is the cooperation of, let's say, collaboration of the supply base. In many cases, starting from strategic items that we supply daily and to the standard items, we need to have the supply base shoulder to shoulder, helping the supply chain to create values to control the total cost of ownership of our products. I believe that if you do not have the supply base beside yourself, you will not be able to handle, or let's say tolerate, and to be resilient in the pandemic, in the, let's say, unrest situation that we have in the region in the recent years. This is a let's say, paramount step in the journey of cost saving and efficiency creation in any procurement transformation journey.
I do like the fact you've gone to the importance of the people so early here, because in all our conversations about technology, AI, data, all the rest of it, you can get very lost in that aspect and forget the fact there are people who have to actually run these things. So I love the fact we've come to that so early. Cory Thwaites, we'll come to you next at QNB Group. For you, let's stick with this question about efficiency. How do you feel organisations, and yourself as well, can transform procurement functions to drive efficiency and drive those savings?
Hi, thanks for the invitation. For me, I think the key thing is standardization and centralization. So I'm working obviously for Q&B. We're a global organization. We didn't have a centralized procurement function when I joined. So the key thing for me is making sure we standardize where possible across the business, and centralized procurement where all the key decisions when it comes to procurement are made from a centralized location. I agree with the previous comment about people, making sure you have a training program and accreditation, maybe if that's CIPS or other accreditations, and train and empower your staff to make informed procurement decisions. But I think all of that really is underpinned by technology, having the right e-procurement solution, trying to automate where possible when it comes to your purchase requisitions or the source to pay process, your contract management, and having your data in one space, which then you can build on with analytics to start making even further informed procurement decisions. So for me, I think you're looking at centralization, standardization, obviously the people aspects, but making sure that's underpinned by the right technology, which, where possible, should automate and standardize, support the standardization of a number of your processes.
Yes, Cory, technology is where we'll be going next. And I have to say, I have a certain fascination in speaking to procurement and supply chain professionals who are starting centralised operations, because you always get some wonderful stories about the things they've found when they've started and the improvements they've made just by making simple changes. But that's a conversation for another day. We won't have that one now.
Meeting.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. One for offline, I think. Vidya, Malkani, lovely to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us. We can come to you next with your consulting hat on here very much. For you, advice you give on effectively transforming procurement functions for efficiency and cost savings. What's your perspective on that?
Hi, Neil. Good to see you again. So I think most of it is covered already. I will try and present a different perspective to this, because I think before you take on the transformation journey, it's very important for procurement to understand what are the business goals, objectives, what is the business and stakeholders looking for, to ensure that the transformation journey you take really aligns and has the maximum efficiency driven out of it, right? So whether it's agility, whether it's visibility, whether it's transparency, every organization has a different need. So to make sure that your talent is trained for the right skills which are needed in the organization, to ensure that your technology is aligned with what the business needs. So I think really aligning with the business vision, goals, and procurement departments' current maturity to what is needed is the key foundation before you take on a transformation journey. And that can really, I think, unlock a lot of value into digitization, into talent development, into efficiency, into processes. So that would be my take, adding on to what my colleagues have just shared.
Yeah, we'll pick up more on the how of making that technology play a part in the transformation journey in just a moment. But thank you, Vidya. Alberto, we'll come to you next. You are coming to this from an inspection services point of view very much. Some fascinating technology there. For you, how do you feel, say, your perspective from here, such as inspection technology, can help drive efficiency and cost savings?
Yeah, well, basically, I agree with all of my partners in the panel. Just I would like to add that actually we believe that technology should be deflationary. So at the end of the day, probably the first steps once you're implementing the digitization of the transformation, probably will be more like an investment. But at the end of the day, once you have more massive operations, the cost per operation, the marginal cost should be lower. So at the end, that will be reflected in the cost of the technology. So in our case, in our experience at Telescope Inspection, we have leveraged our blockchain platform to transform the first mile in supply chain. So in particular the container loading events. So we integrated this system into our daily operations, and we are able to make the automatization for the first mile and optimize the visibility of the every step in the supply chain, especially for this very specific step that regularly represents that it's a blind spot for the customers. So this strategy actually is followed and supported by blockchain technology, and has enabled us to unlock significant cost savings for our customers, specifically because we are able to track every single detail that happens during the first mile in the supply chain, especially loading event. So in overall, the procurement performance, it has been we have been able to bring full visibility to the shipping events. So, and when we are able to gather all data and the analytics that comes with this kind of information. So yeah, in general, I guess, and well, it's not, it's an affirmation. I believe that in massive scale, we are able to bring more efficiency and cost savings.
Yes, I know, Alberto, when we last spoke, you spoke in a bit more detail about how some of that technology you guys work with operates and the insights it can give, and it was absolutely fascinating, so that's well worth looking up. Where I want to go to next is sticking with the line about technology. I'm not going to ask the question, does technology help? Because the answer is yes, and it'd be a very short set of questions. So what I'd like to look at more is, because the technology underpins a lot of these transformations and dictates the success of these transformations, how, from all of your collective experience, do you get the best out of that technology? How do you make sure the implementation works so you get what you were hoping for, and sometimes more? Cory, we'll start with you on this. You've obviously been through a lot of these processes relatively recently, sort of implementing new things at QMB Group. For you, how have you gone about that implementation to make sure that you've got what you were hoping for, got what you paid for, and hopefully a little bit more in places?
I think the key thing for me was to make sure at the very beginning you define your requirements in detail. So I think, as one of the panelists said, when you're getting involved in change management with the business, understanding their challenges, understanding what's not working today, and making sure you define that in your requirements document when you're going out to the market. Once you get your response back, I've always had a feeling that you don't want to be too, most of these e-procurement systems, are you looking at best of breed systems that have been developed over time. So you should never feel that you shouldn't tailor the way that your current process works to how the system works. So not trying to, and I think one of the good things now with cloud-based solutions, you're not customizing too much. So don't get too caught up on trying to customize it to match exactly what you do today. So those are, for me, when I'm looking to buy a system, are key points. The other thing is try and find, is look for something where you can manage the whole cycle. So whether that is just the source to contract, but then also look at how you manage your supply base and supply relation management tools. Also look at if you've got a system where that integrates the analytics piece. So you're getting live up to the minute data rather than having to, I've done this in the past where every quarter you send your data to a spend management or a spend analytics company, and they clean the data and pull it into a spend analysis tool. Try and look for a package that's end to end. So at any time you've got real time data on how your business is running and how your procurement activities are running. So those are the kind of things I would look for, and pointers I would say to anyone else interested in buying a solution.
And that's the value of these kind of events. You've been through that process very relatively recently, and those are the things you're looking for. Vidya, if we can come to you next on this one. For you, when it comes to implementation, I guess that's the golden thing that you're trying to make work. What advice do you give on that?
Right. So from my perspective, two advice. One, when you're trying to digitize, when you're trying to bring a system, don't replicate your processes as is in the system. Don't look for a system which will translate your paper into a system, because that doesn't work in a longer run. And that's also not very efficient. You'll not be able to unlock the complete value from the system. So go with an open mind, see what the system can offer beyond what you may already know, and help you understand what is out there in the market. So I think that is very important. This is where a lot of transformations go wrong, because they try to replicate what they have. Second, I think for a system to be very successful, it has to be user-friendly, because at the end of the day, procurement team is not the only one touching the system. You have suppliers, you have your stakeholders, and that adoption is very important for your transformation to be successful. So make sure that, Cory said that don't go for customization, and this is where I come from. So choose the system which gives you a simple user experience where the users will adapt to it very quickly. So for me, I think these two are make or break when you go on a transformation journey.
Alberto, if we can come to you next. I guess we're approaching it for you from a slightly different point of view. People are using your services and your systems. From that perspective, how do you, at an organisation like Telescope, make sure customers are implementing your solutions properly and getting the best from them?
Well, actually, first I was going to start talking about our experience implementing the digitization. Actually, we have to be in deep communication with our customers, with our operations team, and with our coding team in order to align all the ideas. So basically, yes, I believe that number one, the first priority is communication, and the second priority should be being flexible, because sometimes when you are building a system or you are going and pushing forward to digitization, many times the coding team, they will develop the system, but in supply chain especially, everything ceteris paribus, everything is changing. So basically, there's nothing fixed. So you should implement the certain specific degrees of freedom in your system to be flexible enough and accept any kind of changes from, one PO is changing, you already have digitized it, but you have to change to another PO. So the events are changing, and every single factor can be changing. So yeah, flexibility is very important as well. And once we implement this, and the customers were able to see that actually we were able to replicate in a digital space what was going on in reality during the loading events, yeah, they were pretty satisfied with the outcome, and especially with all the analytics that we are able to gather. So yeah, I think those are the best tools for the first steps of digitization: communication and flexibility.
Thank you, Alberto. Mohammadi at Mammut World, we'll come to you last on this. Anything you'd want to add on that in terms of that implementation phase?
Well, actually, all my colleagues went through all aspects. If I want to add any aspect, well, in the implementation phase, or let's say before implementation, we should know what is the roadmap, what we are going to expect from technology. If we do not know what we are going to expect, then we will not be able to implement it efficiently. Well, why do we go for technology? How does it helps us? Well, we should know what is the friction in our current situation, and what is the waste of our procurement teams, and what are the bugs of our procurement processes and procedures. So understanding the needs and requirements, as my colleagues mentioned, then we will go for technology and implement it via understanding different aspects of new technologies, or let's say new ERPs and AI or RPA, any new technology.
Thank you very much indeed. Where I want to go next is about suppliers, because internally you can have gone through a transformation process, you can have brought on the best technology, you can have the best people working on it, But if the suppliers aren't playing ball, if the suppliers aren't engaged, if the suppliers don't know what they're meant to be doing, the whole transformation can have problems, serious problems. So let's look at how we actually engage the suppliers and involve the suppliers in that transformation and make them part of it. Vidya Malkani, will come to you first on that. When it comes to advising people on how to engage with those suppliers and get them on board with the transformation, where do you start? How do you get that to work properly?
I think when it comes to suppliers, there are a couple of things to keep in mind. First of all, you need to assess your supplier base to see what percentage of suppliers you think will actually adopt to the system. Looking at our region and where we work, we have a lot of suppliers who work with manual systems. They still work with paper. So it is very important to understand what percentage can be converted easily and what percentage will have to be dealt with. Second point would be, I think there is a very important decision to be made internally within the organization. What is going to be the stand for those vendors who do not want to onboard onto the system? Right. So I think that strategy plays a very interesting role when you do the transformation, because if those suppliers are not going to come on board, and if the organization says that, well, if they don't come on board, we don't work with them, then what is your plan going to be? Are you going to find new suppliers? What if you have contracts with them? So I think figuring out the plan of how you're going to onboard the suppliers is very critical in the success. When it comes to implementation and actual onboarding of the suppliers, I think in that respect, making sure the suppliers have been briefed properly onto how to come on board, to if they have any issues, who can they reach out to, and making sure that the person who is communicating from within your team with the suppliers is well versed on how to address those questions will ensure that you have a good success rate in bringing suppliers on board. This is from an onboarding perspective. From a system usability perspective, when you're running RFPs or asking for pre-qualification or any other functionality of your system, again, I think there is an initial phase where it's very important to handhold the vendors and make sure that they are able to use the system. If not, you have that help desk to support them. And I think after the first round of using the system, this is where the comfort will come in. So I think from my perspective as a supplier journey, this is very important to provide them with the support from the stage of onboarding to the stage of utilization, and a very important role of making sure that you have a very clear roadmap of how you're going to deal with the suppliers who do not come on board.
Yeah, very wise. Vidya, that's something you mentioned there about particular challenges in the region and the unique challenges of the region. That's somewhere I'm going to go next. So you've set that up beautifully. Thank you very much indeed. I always think you can see my notes when we're talking. You tend to take me where I'm going next. So Alberto, I'll come to you next. Just sticking to the supplier question. From your perspective, how do you make sure the suppliers are part of that journey?
Well, actually, our solution comes out of the solving this kind of situation between the customers and the suppliers. So, from a different industry's perspective, there are different kind of solutions and different kind of suppliers. Let's say from a perspective in a more industrialized, in a more industrial industry, let's say, for example, something that is more related like upstream instead of mainstream, instead of something that is not retail. So that would be easier, in my opinion. But once you're talking about retail business, probably, especially talking about massive consumption products. So the communication with suppliers and the implementation with suppliers might be the real challenge, because in our experience, let's say, for example, for our operations with some of the largest retailers in North America, we have seen that probably once they have placed the purchase orders, the POs with their vendors, probably the vendors will outsource the POs with small factories or small companies. So that kind of information is something that actually the vendor, they don't want such information to be known by the customer. So that's exactly where we actually came into the game. So it's like, as an inspection company, we are the third party validation company to actually check where the products were loaded, where the products were manufactured. And in this way, we identify this chance like an opportunity where actually we are a bottleneck for all the information that is going on for the loading events. So that's how we ended up coming with this information, with this system to actually collect all the data from all the different locations where we go to do the inspection, and at the same time digitizing it, which is, like the first steps in the first stages to fully digitize the whole containers information that actually can be streamlined into becoming digital import manifest. So we check all the quantities, we check all the information, we check every single PO, every single HS code, and we digitize that information. So yeah, it's a real challenge for customers to make vendors and suppliers to be aligned with that strategy. And that's how we enter into this equation, being like a bridge between suppliers and customers.
Yeah, and Alberto, that's one of the reasons I always so enjoy your input, because you are that close to those suppliers and customers with your platform there. Javad Mohammadi, Mammut, we'll come to you next on this about suppliers. How do you do that? How do you solve that problem of getting those suppliers involved in the transformation?
Well, actually, suppliers, when you want to implement procurement transformation, supplier base needs to be engaged and involved in every step. When I do this, I have certain people in my team assigned to the task of briefing suppliers on what is the journey of procurement transformation that we are looking for. Why do we do these steps? Why do we digitalize this step of our procurement? Why do we do this supplier relationship management KPIs? If my suppliers, especially strategic suppliers, are not in line with my transformation, we will not reach anywhere. I had the experience of this, let's say, miscommunication, or let's say misalignment between the company, organization, and supplier base. Well, I understand that in the implementation phase, you should start from strategic suppliers, that they already know what is procurement transformation, what is digitalization, and they have touched it already. Otherwise, with normal suppliers, or let's say level BC suppliers, we will have various challenges understanding what is the goal of this transformation. Well, especially with the, let's say, standard suppliers, standard product suppliers, it is a big hassle to understand each step of the transformation. I believe that, communication, collaboration, and also understanding which supplier to go for and which supplier to, let's say, replace in future is the main task of the Center of Excellence that is implementing the transformation of procurement.
I like the hands-on approach very much, so not taking anything for granted. Cory, we'll come to you last on this one. I appreciate a lot of points have already been made, but anything you add from your perspective about that relationship with suppliers?
Yeah, I think it's just making it as easy for them to onboard. So if you think about it, when it comes to the transformation, if you've been working on the manual process, one of the key things you're going to be doing now is telling the vendor to maybe submit invoices or respond to RFPs through the system. So it's trying to make it as easy as possible, giving them user guides, videos, having regular communications with them to make sure they fully understand the process and how to onboard themselves. Even taking the call of onboarding suppliers, in some countries you have suppliers that, like one of my panelists said, they may be not so computer literate. Then helping them helping them register themselves so they can communicate with you and respond to requests. So really, I think it's about trying to make it as easy as possible and not feeling that you can't assist them by going through that registration or onboarding process for them for those smaller suppliers who may have difficulty.
Thank you very much, Cory. We're really pushing for time now, so if I could ask we keep these next set of answers fairly short and sweet, sort of 30 seconds to a minute, I'd be very grateful. And it's just returning to the regional challenges, really, when it comes to what are the particular challenges of trying to go through a transformation process working in the Middle East area, because there's different challenges in different parts of the world. Alberto, I'll come to you first quickly on this. What are those particular challenges that are unique to the region, and how do you overcome them?
Well, I think actually it applies to every single region. As long as you are working in a global scale, in which you have to deal with different kind of legislation. In our point of view, where we actually are pushing forward for the digitization of the first mile in the global trade container loading events. So we believe that actually this kind of solution might streamline all the information needed for digitize import manifest. But every single country has different regulations for the import manifest and customs regulations. So basically, I think the big challenge once you are working in between different borders would be the homologation for different kind of customs laws.
Thank you, Alberto. Javad Mohammadi at Mammut World, if I come to you on that next. The regional challenges.
Well, actually, the region that you're talking about is the hottest spot of the world. Well, there are so many challenges we are facing daily as being a multinational company. In the, let's say, pandemic and post-pandemic situation, and also the unrest situation that we recently had in the region, the most important part of managing this situation is supplier analytics, spend analytics, and also cost analytics. I remember the pandemic start dates. At that time, I was in the food industry. We were buying commodities. In order to understand when to start, when to embark on the, let's say, procurement process of a commodity like palm oil or, let's say, sunflower oil, is very important, because in that, let's say, pandemic, in that unrest situation, any analytics that you had already will not work at that time. You need to be very careful, very, let's say, vigilant about the situation, and understand where to start your, let's say, purchases, where to source it, and how to manage your sources in this situation. I believe that today in the region, supplier diversification and cost analysis and the, let's say, world market analysis is three important factors when a CPO wants to make a decision on buying or not buying in an unrest situation, which will severely affect the bottom line.
Absolutely. Cory Thwaites, if we can come to you next on that one, those regional challenges.
Yeah, I think it's something that I've seen changing is the universities actually having procurement qualifications and procurement as a big, I suppose, as a degree in the universities. So people start, leaving university and really understanding what procurement is in the region. I think a lot of the people in procurement, the locals, are usually have fallen into procurement, so they don't really see procurement as a career and rather a jobs. But I do see that changing. So I think if with more universities offering supply chain logistics or international procurement or as a degree at degree level, I think you'll see an improvement.
Yeah, I do agree. The number of times I interview incredibly senior procurement professionals and you say, well, how did you get into this? And they go, well, it was an accident. And your conversation goes from there. Yeah. But then they wouldn't change a thing because they love it. Vidya, if I can give you the last word on this, those regional challenges in terms of having a transformation.
Yeah, so I think supplier due diligence, this is one of the areas of challenge in this region. I mean, the transparency of data isn't really there. It's changing over time, but I think it's still an area where, procurement struggles to get information about vendors, do a risk assessment on suppliers. And I've seen, when you do supplier pre-qualification, this is one of the key areas we struggle, where suppliers don't want to share all information or insights or financial information. So I think this is one area which really needs to develop in this region. Besides, I think my colleagues have covered everything here.
Lovely. Well, all I can do is apologise to all of you, because I've got so many areas I want to cover and we've run out of time. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. We could speak for another couple of hours, I think, but I'm sure you're all busy people and have things to do, and we have other sessions to get to. So I'd just like to thank you all for your time today and joining us here at Procurement and Supply Chain Live Dubai.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.